Hi everyone. Today we're going to be doing a bit of an interesting video. I'm going to be actually taking a look at something that I saw over on the website 538 that I thought was quite interesting, and I'm going to be taking a look and see could this actually happen in a realistic scenario for the Democrats in the Senate in 2020. So over on Nate Silver's 538 in the politics section of that website, there was a video here called Confidence Interval where they give you some sort of take that's going around in the political world and then tell you how confident they are. So let's take a look at that.
Series Confidence Interval, where we give you a take and then tell you how confident we are in that take. Is the Democrats could win up to 60 seats in the U.S. Senate this year, which would be a filibuster-proof majority. Currently, Republicans control the Senate 53 seats to 47, which means Democrats would need to flip 13 seats in this year's election to make it to 60. Where would Democrats find these 13 seats? Well, I have a list of winnable Senate seats for Democrats right here. Colorado, Arizona, Maine, North Carolina, Iowa, Montana, Georgia regular election, the Georgia special election, Kansas, Texas, Alaska, South Carolina, and Kentucky. That's 13.
Okay, so how confident are you that this will happen?
How confident am I? I'm not too confident that this is going to happen. Look, Democrats do have a path to 60 seats. All of the seats that I mentioned are at least somewhat competitive. But even in a blue wave election year, it's going to be hard for them to win all of those seats. So, for example, Colorado and Arizona are two seats that Democrats seem to be ahead in right now. I don't feel too bad about predicting that Democrats will flip those seats. In addition, there are several seats that are roughly toss-ups. Seats like Maine, North Carolina, Iowa, Montana, maybe even Georgia. Democrats could very well win most or even all of these seats. But beyond that, it's going to get hard. States like Kansas and Texas are still probably leaning Republican. Finally, although Democrats have some strong candidates who've raised a lot of money in states like Alaska, South Carolina, and Kentucky, they're still red states, and it's probably asking too much to expect Democrats to flip those Senate seats while Donald Trump is carrying those seats at the top of the ticket. If you liked this video, remember to subscribe to 530.
So I thought that was quite interesting and for a few reasons, because it sort of opened my mind, and I was like, well, maybe there is a shot that they could get a filibuster-proof majority. But at this point, it seems quite unlikely that that's going to take place. Just because all of those seats, especially some of the redder states like Kentucky, South Carolina, Alaska, Kansas, even those, a lot of Democrats would tell you that we're probably not going to win those seats. So even if you had, all the tiles fall at the exact right time, they got the Chris Kobach in Kansas, who's a very weak Republican candidate. If there was scandals for a lot of these Republican senators, I guess you could say there's a path to 60 seats, but it seems unlikely. So what we're going to do today instead, we're going to map out what is the most amount of Senate seats the Democrats could realistically get up to. Not really like 60 seats, because that does seem a bit excessive. So let's just firstly start off with if it's gonna let us, there we go. Let's start off first with the seats that Democrats are probably gonna take and hold on to. And by the way, that would include Democrats holding Alabama, which seems a bit of a stretch at this point. So Illinois, Dick Durbin, the incumbent there. Massachusetts with Ed Markey. Joe Kennedy could win the primary, but so whoever it is, the Democrat winning there. Rhode Island, Jack Reed, the incumbent, winning re-election. In New Jersey, Cory Booker, we can predict winning re-election. In Delaware as well. There in the state of New Hampshire, Jeanne Shaheen is ahead by quite a bit, and the Republicans failed to field a good candidate in the state of New Hampshire, so that we can assume goes over to the Democrats, maybe likely to go over to the Democrats. Virginia with Mark Warner, again likely to move into the Democratic column in the state of Virginia. Moving on to the next state, we're going to take a look at the state of Oregon. State of Oregon, we can assume that goes to the Democrats as well. In the state of New Mexico, New Mexico, we could say, is going to go to the Democrats. I guess you could say there's not an incumbent there, but at the same time, it's New Mexico, so it's probably going to go to the Democrats. So right now, the Democrats, with those seats that they're probably going to take, are at 44. And if we add in other states like Minnesota, which is probably going to go to the Democrats with Tina Smith, and Michigan with Gary Peters, the polling's looking good for him there. Now they're up to 46 seats. So all they need, assuming Biden wins the presidency, is 4 more seats to win to win the Senate majority back. So they don't need to worry about people like Alaska. They don't need to worry about Kansas. They don't need to worry about Texas. They don't need to worry about, South Carolina or Kentucky, because all they need is just 4 seats. So where could they get that? Well, Colorado and Arizona they look now sort of like goners for the Republicans. So if assuming the Democrats can win Colorado in a likely fashion, Arizona in a leaning fashion, then they're up to 48. They just need 2 more out of these toss-ups. And given there are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 toss-up seats, I could have just looked there, it's not hard to imagine Democrats would win 2 of them. But what we're going to be doing today is what is the most realistic scenario to the highest amount of seats for the Democrats. So let's go ahead and assume that they take some of these other states that they're already ahead in, like Maine and especially the state of North Carolina. There's a poll that just came out today that showed Cal Cunningham +9 in North Carolina. So if that one goes to the Democrats, and Maine also, Susan Collins loses there, now they're at 50 seats. And so now they need to start picking off some of these Republican seats that they might not win. So, firstly, let's go ahead and in the Democrats' best case scenario, you could probably see out of these seats what's the most likely to go Democratic. I would say there's 4 here that in the next sort of batch that are sort of maybe leaning Republican, but still, could go to the Democrats. That's the state of Montana, the state of Iowa, the state of Georgia, and the special election in the state of Georgia. So in the most realistic scenario for the Democrats, maybe I could predict they win Montana and Iowa, the Republicans keep both of the Georgia seats. But in the best case scenario for the Democrats, we can assume that they could take Montana, Iowa, they've got strong candidates in both of those states, Georgia, and the Georgia special election. But all of these seats all go to the Democrats in their best case. Now they're at 54. This is where I feel, maybe we're sort of reaching the max of how well the Democrats could do. And, they've added in states like Alaska, where they've fielded a strong candidate, Texas, where they've got, MJ Hagar, Kansas, where the Republicans could nominate a 2-time loser, Kentucky, where they've got McGrath, with McConnell having a bad approval rating, South Carolina, the challenger has raised a lot of money to Senator Lindsey Graham, and Alabama. At this point, Alabama, I guess you could say it could go to the Democrats, but it does seem like Tommy Tuberville is quite a favorite. So we're actually going to give, even in the Democrats' best case scenario, we're going to lean that over to the Republicans, even with that Democratic incumbent there. So now we've got 5 toss-up seats. You've got Alaska, Texas, Kansas, Kentucky, and South Carolina. And even in the best case scenario for the Democrats, I think I could probably only see them picking up 2 out of these 5 seats. So I know they did have them winning all 5 in the video to get them to 60. And also having them hold on to Alabama. But I think Alabama's sort of now gone for the Democrats. So out of Alaska, Texas, Kansas, Kentucky, and South Carolina, I feel that even in the best case scenario, they're probably only going to win two out of those seats. So what are the two most likely seats? So let's go ahead here and take a look at some of the polling data that we've been getting, and we do have some, I believe, from the state of Alaska, U.S. Senate. Alright, so in the state of Alaska here, this is from a long time ago, so we'll ignore those polls. But here you can see Dan Sullivan right now up 5 in July 8th and up 13 in July 16th. So it does seem that even with a strong candidate in Al Gross, it does seem that Alaska probably gonna still with its red tilt lean towards the Republicans. Let's go ahead and take a look. Let's go ahead and take a look at the state of Texas. Alright, so in the Hagar versus West situation, all of these polls really, show Cornyn with a pretty big lead over, there is one here. Oh no, sorry, that's Beto O'Rourke. So MJ Hagar, Cornyn plus 17, that was a long time ago though. But it does seem that Cornyn plus 10, Cornyn plus 9, Cornyn plus 8, Cornyn plus 13, Cornyn plus 11. By the way, it does seem that Royce West does do better than Hagar in a lot of these matchups, but it does seem that Texas also probably gonna stay Republican with the top of the ticket there, going for the GOP as well. It does actually seem that the presidential race is much more competitive than the Senate race there in Texas. Alright, so out of these three, I think the Democrats, in their absolute best case scenario, could take 2 of these seats. So let's go ahead and take a look at Kansas. And in the Democrats' best case scenario, they nominate Chris Kobach here. And you can see here, Barbara Bourlet is leading there in that one, and it seems to be quite a tight race. It could go back and forth if Kobach is the nominee, and it's interesting. But in the Democrats' best case scenario, we're going to assume that they can actually flip the state of Kansas into the blue column. Now, out of Kentucky, South Carolina, and we're going to add in Alabama, these are 3 states, and I think the Democrats are probably going to only take one of them. And out of these states, it could be tight, but out of these states, I probably think South Carolina's probably the next most likely to flip. Graham is plus 3, plus 2, plus 7, tied in South Carolina, plus 4 there. So you could see a best case scenario where the Democrats do take the state of South Carolina. And in the state of Kentucky, here there was a new poll here. You can see here for yourself. McConnell, the polling's very wild here. It's sort of going up and down a lot. But McConnell plus 22, McConnell plus 4, plus 14, plus 20, McGrath plus 1. So it's all sort of a bit up and down. But the latest poll has McConnell up 22. Even in the best case scenario, we see that one moving over to the Republicans. And in the best case scenario, let's go ahead and take a look at the state of Alabama. So it's now down to Alabama or South Carolina. So a lot of these sort of Tuberville plus 10, Tuberville plus 8, plus 3, it does seem that he sort of seems to be extending his lead in the state of Alabama. So I think that probably the next most likely is the state of South Carolina, and Alabama stays with the Republicans. So this is sort of the best possible scenario for the Democrats that I see. I think Alaska's already a bit too far gone for the Democrats. Texas is too far gone. Kentucky, you could see, but I think it's definitely going to go to the Republicans leaning right now. And then Alabama, you do have an incumbent there, but Democrats don't normally win in Alabama, so it's going to be tough for Doug Jones to win there. And then a lot of these toss-up seats like Montana, Iowa, Georgia, Maine, a lot of those toss-ups, we've leaned them Democratic in the best case scenario, but definitely could go to the GOP. But a lot of these seats that the Democrats are hoping to flip, Colorado and Arizona, both of these, and Alabama, I feel like they're definitely going to be flips in the next election cycle. So that's it for today's video, guys. 56 for the Democrats, 44 for the Republicans. They had the top at 60, but it seems that Texas, Alaska is a bit much for the Democrats. South Carolina to take, but this is my best case scenario for the Democrats. So that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Good night.